I got all confused because I have another Tushita session on Monday. I don't know why they got so close together, but as a result, I got them confused with you. So I didn't even know I was doing today. Pepe said yesterday evening, well, good that you are, good luck for tomorrow. And I said, what's happening tomorrow? My page is blank. And he said, you have a Zoom meeting with Tushita tomorrow. I said, no, that's Monday. And he said, no.
Jetsunma, we got confused as well. I was like, Pema, are we advertising about something I don't know about? And she said, not really. So we got confused as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all a bit confused. It's the weather.
Well, it's great that we're going to have 2 Tushita meetings, so to say.
Yeah, I don't know how it came that they were both, sort of back to back, but anyway, so be it. But different questions, so that's a good thing.
No, in a way, no connection. Yes. Yeah, same name, but different entity. Something like that.
Yeah, but they're both called Tushita Meditation Center. So it made it very, I got confused between, you lot and Delhi, and it's my fault. I wasn't thinking. But also because we arranged it last year, and I didn't have my book for this year, so I didn't write it down. I'm making excuses, right? My own incompetence. Anyway, here we all are.
We are here. It's excellent. Thank you so much, Jetsunma, for joining us. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Today, we are on the 9th day of the Days of Miracles. We are moving quickly ahead. We are kind of over the middle since we have 16 days this year. And we are so happy that we have you all with us. Good afternoon in India. Good morning in Americas. In Europe, it's lunchtime. In Australia, I think you're almost ready to go to bed. It's in the evening. So we are so happy to have you all here. And we are so honored to have Jetsunma with us again. I looked it up. Jetsunma last year was the 9th day of the Days of Miracles as well. And since it was such a pleasure always to have you, I think very auspicious to have you on the same day. And we are so, so happy that you joining us. And please allow me. I saw last year we got away with it. So please allow me. Sashi perki jukche me tok tram re rapling zini de gyampa di sangye zindu mi keo wai droko namdak zingla tripa shok. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guratna Mandala Kamnyayatayami. Thank you, Jetsunma. Jetsunma, could I request you to lead us in a refuge prayer? Would that be?
I think you must have your own formula, so maybe you should lead the refuge prayer.
Okay.
I only know Tibetan, which is not very useful.
I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Wonderful to have you here with us, Jetsunma, and those to be trained. That is, of course, us. And I'm, whoop.
I'm trying to find you. I've lost you.
Yes, That's all right. That's all right. As long you're here with us, that is the most important feature. Jetsunma, so this is a question and answer for everybody. So many of you sent us questions, and we chose some, and then Jetsunma also chose, made the last choice. Thank you so much, everybody, for your great interest. And yes, and there will be more sessions for question and answer in the future, we do hope. So please don't be disappointed if your question will not be covered today, but I'm sure it will be an amazing session. Yes. Thank you so much, Jetsunma. And shall we just jump right into it? I think everybody who's here knows Jetsunma. Also, we screened again the Cave in the Snow, Jetsunma. So there was an introduction to your life, half of your life maybe. May you have a very long life. And so everybody, had the introduction to Jetsunma this way. And we have 3 translators joining us today again with simultaneous translation Jetsunma. So it's Venerable Sayana translating again into Italian, Venerable Paloma very kindly into Spanish, and Alexandra into Portuguese. So people who are interested in these language translations, please go on the menu of your Zoom, and there is an interpretation channel. Just click on the language of your choice, and then you can hear the translations. Thank you so much to the translators. And Jetsunma, may I give the word to you, so to say? I'm not a very good moderator. Shall we start with the first question, Jetsunma?
Yes, but please, can I get back to you? I don't want to look at me. Oh. That's it. Thank you.
Here we go.
Yes.
Jetsunma, 2 weeks ago, it is now that horrible war started in the Ukraine. So many people, of course, wonder, what to do. How can we, deal with these horrible circumstances? What can we do? And could you please give us a few words of wisdom? Yes, there's in these very difficult circumstances.
Well, of course, there's no immediate solution. There's nothing that any of us can do which is going to solve this horrendous problem. But I do think it is very important that we, at this time when the planet is locked in all this paranoia, hatred, fear, and so many negative emotions, that we do not add to that psychic pollution which is covering the planet at this time by becoming angry, upset, anxious, and emotionally involved in a negative way. So what we need to do is to counteract that negative force with positive thoughts. And Buddhism is wonderful for that also, because it has many teachings on how to radiate love, how to radiate compassion into the world, into all sentient beings, not just the humans, but all the animals, insects, birds, fish, and so forth. The whole planet, also nature, everything, to imagine that we are radiating light, love, compassion into the world. Tonglen, where we breathe in the negative and breathe out the positive. Even to Putin. I have a number of friends who are doing Tonglen practice on Putin, and whether or not it affects him, which we hope it might, it certainly helps them, because we don't need more hatred in this world. I mean, all of these beings, all beings have Buddha nature. All beings have basic goodness, no matter how confused they might be at this time. And we should remember that. And also remember on both sides, both Ukraine and Russia, most people don't want to fight, including those poor young Russian soldiers and so forth who are forced to do this against their better nature. So compassion and feeling that this light that we are sending out is a healing light to heal all the wounds, the psychic wounds, as well as the physical wounds, which are taking place on this planet at this time. So the important thing is not to plug in to negative energy, but to transform that into very positive energy for everybody, not taking sides. Everybody is involved in the pain of this situation. And also for those who are, outside of these actual countries, but nonetheless emotionally involved, compassion for them too. Just compassion is very healing. And that's the only thing we can give to this planet at this time, is our loving compassion. Not to get caught up in the negative. That's the important thing. Mm-hmm. Which the media wants us to do, right? The media wants us to be paranoid. The media wants to stir up all the negative aggression within us. And we have to say no.
Yeah. Jetsunma, I also have friends, when I wanted to catch up with them, they said they feel almost like guilty, talking about their own lives right now, or, the little worries they might have, or even bigger worries, I do have to say, some going also through horrendous things like cancer or things like that. And they were like, how can I, be in my little bubble, my grateful little bubble, or maybe in my joyful little bubble, if there's so much suffering going on in this world, they feel like that guilt, I can't be joyful anymore. I have to,
That is again wrong, because first of all, this is samsara. And samsara, by its very nature, is dukkha, is unsatisfactory. There's always something somewhere. I mean, everybody's caught up in the Ukraine and Russia. What about what's happening in Burma? What about what's happening in Afghanistan? What about what's happening in so many of the African states, in the South American states? Because that is not right next door, nobody cares. But samsara just keeps rolling around. Are we going to be miserable? If we are just miserable and guilty, where does that help anybody? The people around you, they've got to deal with you because you're in your guilt trip. That is also a kind of self-pity. Samsara is samsara. The Buddha said that, this is a path of joy. And his Sakya clan, right? His people were all involved in a big war during the time of the Buddha and wiped out. It was genocide, right? By the local other tribe, right? So all his people got killed. If he had been a prince and not left the palace, he probably would have been killed, because as a prince, he would have been a warrior. He was a kshatriya. So, despite the fact that he knew perfectly well that people are always fighting each other, when have they ever stopped? He nonetheless talked about joy. He talked about love. All the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are smiling. You think they don't feel the suffering of the world? But they smile. And they tell us beyond all that, it's okay. But, yes, by all means feel compassion, by all means feel love, send that out. But don't spend the time scratching yourself, to increase the wound as if the blood is going to be good for you. Your suffering is going to be good for them. It's not like that. Because we can always feel guilty. There's always horrible things happening. Forget Ukraine, Russia, next door. All the domestic abuse, all the young people committing suicide, all the drugs, all the alcohol, all the, criminology going on in the world. There's plenty to feel miserable about. What good is that? Yes, to realize that samsara is difficult, but at the same time to recognize what a jewel the Dharma really is. Because in the midst of all that, we have something which is true, which is beautiful, which is pure, to hold on to as a refuge. So merely making ourselves miserable doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help ourselves, doesn't help the people around us, doesn't help the people anywhere. Mm-hmm. And it makes us weak in the end. At a time when we need to be strong. All the people I know who deal with like the homeless and abused women and all the horrors which go on in society, they are radiant with joy because they have love. I mean, I think it's very important to recognize that love and compassion doesn't make us miserable. It gives us an inner strength and radiance. I mean, all the people I know who are really helping in this world are beautiful people because they are so warm and loving and inwardly feel that sense of gratitude for the goodness in the world. Because we shouldn't just focus on what's wrong, we should also think of what's good and what's right and all the goodness there is in the world, along with all the difficulties which we as human beings create. So think of the good.
Yeah, I think, many people struggle with the term compassion that, often it's, many people do so much good in this world and then often they feel overwhelmed and they get what we call in the West compassion fatigue. And then we see His Holiness the Dalai Lama, yourself, many amazing beings who say, if you have real compassion, that should give you, His Holiness always makes that movement that, that should give you courage, and to look ahead and never to give up. So it's, I think, quite a different, a different concept of compassion. Jetsunma?
Well, I think it is, compassion is conjoined with wisdom, with insight. We're seeing things very clearly. So it's not just down here, you're just absorbing all the pain and then it sits there like a big heavy lump inside and then everybody gets burned out. I mean, His Holiness is a perfect example of someone who breathes in when he meets all these people, they're suffering. And he cries. We all know His Holiness is, he's not ashamed at all to break into tears if something moves him. And he is moved because he has great empathy. But it doesn't stay there. Because of his wisdom and his understanding, he's able somehow to transmute it into a very powerful, loving compassion, which isn't something heavy and miserable and woeful that brings him down, but as he says, strengthens him and brings him up. He's a bodhisattva. Mm. I think it's very important to remember Tibetans, when they translated the word bodhisattva, which literally means a wisdom being or an awakened being in Sanskrit. In Tibetan, they translated it as Chanchut Sempa. And Chanchut is Bodhi. Sem means the mind or the spirit. But Pa is Pawo, which means a hero or a warrior. So you're a spiritual warrior. That's the point. You're somebody very brave who is able to take on the suffering, and it doesn't bring them down. When they see, as Shantideva says, a true warrior at the sight of blood doesn't cringe and faint, but becomes stronger and more willing to enter into the battle. So that's the point. I mean, compassion doesn't make us weak. Compassion makes us strong. I mean, you see it in those people who are genuinely doing something really important in the world. They have that inner courage to face anything and knowing that they can deal with it and use it. And that brightens their persona. It doesn't, make you end up, as you're saying, with compassion fatigue. That compassion itself regenerates into even greater and greater deeds of loving compassion and courage. So, you know, we have to make use of these dreadful circumstances, not to feel defeated or guilty, but to be strengthened in our belief in something good in the world, which we can also embody and bring forth. I mean, in the end, however dark the world may be, you know, a single candle can go a long way, as they say, and it's true. And darkness will always be overcome by light. I mean, however dark the room is, if you switch the light on, the darkness is gone. So the true ultimate reality is light, it's not dark. And that's our true nature, everybody, no matter what. Our true nature is light, not dark. We might get messed up along the way, but, you know, eventually, we are all inherently bodhisattvas. Might just take a bit of time.
Thank you, Jetsunma. So I think that is almost answering our next question already. How can we cultivate acceptance towards obstacles and learn how to use them in the path? So not just seeing obstacles out there like horrendous things like war, but also, of course, obstacles in our own mind, in our own path. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very important. This person who asked the question, they really should read more on Lojong, on the mind training teachings, because they are explicitly really dealing with taking things which normally we would regard as obstacles, like sickness, loss, and, you know, all the tragedies which are happening around us in the world. And instead of seeing that as a block, as an obstacle, as being able to cultivate the ability to use it as the opportunity to advance spiritually. I mean, I think that this is really very, very important, that there's this understanding that if we say obstacle, it's an obstacle. If we say opportunity, it becomes an opportunity. And so then in that case, there are no obstacles, because everything can be made use of, you know. I mean, in sickness, we can recognize, you know, our empathy with all those other beings who have sickness like we have sickness. And so we can do this Tonglen practice of giving, taking in their suffering and giving out well-being. Loss, we can also recognize that everything is impermanent. All meetings end in parting, as the Buddha said. And that so many other beings in the world likewise are suffering as we are suffering. So it helps us to open up our heart from our selfish inclusiveness, that is me, I'm suffering, to recognize this is what unites us with all beings, because this is the way things are, you know. And, you know, how can I use my understanding of my suffering to open up to recognize the suffering of all beings, that they're out there. So whatever the obstacles may be, difficult people, difficult circumstances, how can I use this circumstance to cultivate my love, my compassion, my understanding? It doesn't mean that we have to just, you know, if people are in very abusive situations, that we have to think, oh, I'm going to cultivate patience. Maybe at this time we have to be a little wrathful, you know, and get out of an abusive situation. It doesn't help the abuser anymore, and it helps us to just, doesn't mean you have to be passive. It's actually a very active attitude to everything which happens to us. How can I make use of this? How can I cultivate the ability to see with clarity the situation and deal with it responsibly? So, you know, I would say to this person, read Lojong texts, because they can be very, very encouraging to recognize all the different skillful means that we can use to take difficulties onto the path and use them as the path. I think this is very important because samsara by its nature is difficult. And we shouldn't just be striving to make samsara comfortable. It's not about that. It's about taking whatever comes to us and making use of it, taking it onto the path, using everything as a means of cultivating our nature, transforming ourselves and becoming spiritual heroes, becoming bodhisattvas. The bodhisattva was very brave. The Buddha and Shantideva both were kshatriyas. You know, that means warrior caste in the 4-caste system, you know, of Hinduism. And so they were trained as warriors. So they have a lot of battle imagery, both in the suttas and also in Shantideva. And so the idea is that, you know, not that you're outwardly, you know, harming others, but inwardly you have that stance of a warrior who, the more they are threatened, the braver they become. Mm-hmm. So this is the point, that obstacles could be our greatest opportunities. That's the way to think of it. And sometimes I told the story of this when I was having problems, and I asked a priest about the choices between going back into a nice, comfortable retreat and starting a nunnery. And, you know, that the astrologer had said that going back into retreat was very nice, starting a nunnery, many problems, but both were good. And so I thought, well, this means I should go back in retreat. Why start, you know, invite problems? And this priest with great wisdom said that we are like pieces of rough wood. And if we are always rubbing ourselves with silk and velvet, that's very nice, but it doesn't make us smooth. And what makes us smooth is sandpaper. So it doesn't mean we have to endlessly rub ourselves with sandpaper till we get raw, but it does mean that sometimes sandpaper is what will make us smooth. And so just like going to a gym, you have to get on a machine which works for you, you know, which challenges your muscles so that the muscles become strong. If it's too easy, then we're always going to end up with flabby muscles. So we have to, you know, somebody said that life is the gymnasium of the soul. So if you think of soul as the mind of our whole character, then life is our gymnasium where we do our workout. And, you know, we have to accept that and be grateful for what we're learning. You know, I mean, someone else said that life is a schoolhouse, which we are here to learn lessons. And if the lessons are too easy, we don't learn much and we get bored. So we also have to accept challenges, you know, that's how we grow. So like that, I wouldn't worry about the obstacles and the challenges, you know, we have to learn from them. You know, what is this teaching me? How can I respond skillfully? Often when we deal with difficult people, difficult circumstances, we get upset, irritated, annoyed. I know I do. That doesn't help. That's a double whammy. You know, the outer problem, and then also our mind is disturbed and upset. And so then we have a double one. So rather than that, to take whatever comes, the difficulties, and think, okay, this is my opportunity now. How can I deal with this in a more beneficial manner, which will create understanding within myself and also harmony outside myself. And in this way, you know, when difficulties come, we can say, okay, good. You know, now this is my next lesson. What am I going to learn? Isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, it's obvious. I mean, otherwise we can always be being bashed and end up, you know, feeling miserable and defeated. or we can, you know, arouse our natural bodhisattva spirit and, you know, go forward with confidence. Whatever is going to happen, I'll deal with it. Isn't it?
Yes. I think this is answering a lot of questions that haven't been on the list. I remember just, you know, a younger woman, it seemed like, she wrote yesterday and she was like, oh, I must be too late, you know, but she had so many questions. It was all about being stuck with her family. And she said, I'm stuck. She used the word stuck. I can't escape. I'm stuck with my family now for holidays. And, you know, kind of, what am I going to do with that? I just want to escape. And then she probably saw the movie about you and she was wishing probably to be up in a cave. Very romantic. Nice weather. And be, you know, how we wish sometimes, oh, wouldn't be there all these, you know, beings around us we pray for, of course, you know, may all beings be happy, but, you know, this one right there.
Especially family. I mean, Ram Dass famously said that if you think you're enlightened, go and spend a week with your family. Because of course, you know, but they are your best friends, right? They are your spiritual teachers. And how we can deal with the people who are closest and around us, and especially those that we find most frustrating and annoying, with in the family a lot of habitual responses, you know, that's what needs to be examined. Why, you know, they push the buttons because of their familiarity, you know. So then this is a time to really cultivate loving awareness. What are we doing if we can't manage that much? And especially towards people who, you know, cause us the most problems inside ourselves. You know, they are a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to transform. And when your family says, you know, you're much nicer nowadays, what are you doing? Then you maybe think, well, maybe something, you know, is changing inside. Otherwise, if we just, you know, if we're running off to the idea of a cave because we think there it's all going to be perfect and I can really practice, we don't understand what is practice. Really. Our karma has brought us where we are. So if you're in a situation where you're with your family, then this is your perfect opportunity to practice. With joy, with genuine love, with genuine friends. It's not just pretending, but genuinely appreciating them, you know, with all their quirks and their difficulties and whatever, just loving them for it. Not trying to change them. The thing is, you know, who have we got to change?
Yes. I hear you, Jetsunma.
Well, you know, I mean, it's easy to say, and I appreciate that, you know, it is hard to do. I know it is hard to do. I mean, it's always easy to talk. But nonetheless, if we really, really are serious about practicing Dhamma, it has to be right here and now, in whatever situation we're in, and not this romantic idea of if we're in a different situation, we would be different people. Because, you know, really, this is it, where we are right now, how we are dealing with right now. That's it.
Yes, I think.
And however much we fall down, it's again, isn't it?
Yes, yes, Jetsunma. I think many questions also led to, you know, how we always say, but we are in the West, we are so busy. also in India, you know, people are so busy doing so many things, having so many responsibilities, you know, having families, having a job, needing to, you know, provide and so forth. And there is no time for practice. I mean, we all, you know, kind of said it probably, you know, knowing better, but it came out. And so what I'm hearing from you, Jetsunma, is to use every situation wherever we are to practice, and not just sitting on a cushion, you know, in the morning or in the evening, and in that way. But is there a general advice to those busy modern people, I would guess, yeah, we're not in Tibet where it's, you know, not many well, big concerns, of course, how to survive, you know, but otherwise, you know, the internet and the WhatsApp and all these distractions. I think it all comes down to distractions, and often we have many choices. Yeah.
It comes down to distractions. And so I would say, first of all, to really look at your life and see what can be pared away. For example, everybody, wherever you see them, right? Stop it. Stop it. Try to simplify as much as possible. Let go of things which are not so important. And think of life as a practice for the paramita, for all the qualities which we need in this life, including ethical conduct, generosity, patience and forbearance, and just being kind, you know, kind to ourselves, kind to others, smile, encourage people, compliment them when they're doing something nice or they look nice. Say, oh, you look so nice. Oh, that's very pretty. Why not? It might make their day. And above all, to keep this as much as possible, a sense of presence, a sense of awareness, you know, this warm, loving awareness, not a cold awareness. Mindfulness has become quite cold sounding. But this sense of being present where we are, knowing what is going on inside ourselves, and just using the day as a way of cultivating all the qualities of the heart and the mind. You know, it's not a matter of, you know, mastering profound philosophical texts. It's a matter of mastering the mind and no longer being the slave of the mind, but becoming the master of our own mind. And we can only do that through knowing what's going on in the mind and not being swept away, lost, as Mingyur Rinpoche says, that we're lost because we're just caught up all the time in our thinking and we're not even aware that we're thinking. And so to begin to get more sense of inner poise, you know, a sense of this inner presence that we are here right now with whatever we are saying, whatever we're doing, whatever we are thinking, to become more and more conscious of that. And that doesn't take time. It just takes the ability to cultivate this awareness, which is why, of course, it is very good to have a regular practice in order to learn how to cultivate the ability to be aware. So early morning practice or an evening practice, learning even just how to be conscious of the breath, because, you know, we are always breathing throughout the day. So if we get very, you know, confused or things are getting, you know, too many thoughts or something out of hand, just bring yourself back to the breathing in, breathing out, because that brings us back into the present, into the moment. So the Dharma shouldn't be something, I think it's very important that people recognize it's not something outside of daily life. And it's not something which is an added burden on top of our everyday life. We've really got so much to do. Oh God, I've got to do all this practice as well. I mean, that's what you were saying about Tibet. In Tibet, they had enormous amounts of time and not much happening. I mean, in old day Tibet, you know, no electricity, no TV, no telephones, no anything much. They didn't even read much. And no cars, no wheel traffic. And so life was very slow, and there really wasn't that much happening, really. You know, it was all taken at a very slow pace. But nowadays, of course, everything's speeded up. So the only thing we can do is to learn how, in the midst of all that, first to simplify as much as possible, not add more. Why are we so addicted to all our apps? You know, I mean, we can par that down. We don't need to be on Facebook. The world will carry on just as well, whether we know we've got it, we know them or not. And, you know, to simplify things, to make things less distracted, and as much as possible to bring ourselves back into the present moment, being aware of what we are doing, being aware of what we are saying, being aware of what we are thinking. With kindness. So that's my feeling, is that, you know, then the everyday life and all our interactions with others as well as with ourselves becomes part of the practice. We're cultivating the whole time how to be more generous and kind, not just with material goods, but with time, listening to people, being there for people, and just being a genuine friend. Someone that someone can really rely on for their support. And being friends with our family. And appreciating with all their ways, right?
Yes, and not taking them for granted.
Not taking them for granted and not judging them. And just, you know, being a nice person for them, you know, that they can enjoy having around, instead of someone who adds to their problems. We shouldn't be adding to anybody's problems.
Yes. Many questions which were sent to us had to do with attachment, because Buddhism always says attachment is bad, so get rid of it. But you know, Buddhism also tells us we live in the desire realm. Also in good old Tibet, they lived in the desire realm, probably for the buttermilk or something, or butter tea. So there were a few questions. The difference, where is the line between love and attachment in relationships, in romantic relationships? How can we deal with strong grasping and afflictions in our meditation? So all kinds of areas which are covered by attachment, and how to deal with it.
Well, I mean, as far as romantic attachment is concerned, I always say that the difference between love and attachment is that attachment says, I love you and I want you to make me happy. And genuine love says, I love you and I want you to be happy. So whether that includes me or not, your happiness is what counts. Your happiness makes me happy. And it's not grasping. The image is of like a butterfly. If you consider a butterfly, and if you caught a butterfly, you have to hold it very gently. If we go, oh, you're such a beautiful butterfly, I love you. No butterfly. And so very often when people think they love somebody, also not only their own partner, but children, they want them to be how they want. And they don't accept them how they are. And that their happiness is what counts. I mean, that's why I often tell the story of my mother when I was 20 and I heard that I could go to India to work. And I told her that I was going to go to India. And her first response was, "Oh, are you, dear? That's lovely. When are you leaving?" And it's not because she didn't love me. I mean, there were only the two of us. My brother was already abroad and my mother loved me very much. But because she loved me, she was thinking, she knew I wanted to go to India and meet a teacher. And so she was happy for me. She never said, "How can you leave me, your poor old mother? I'm going to be all alone." Never, ever, ever. That's love. Love, it gives, you know, and it leaves things open for others that, you know, especially parents with children who want their children to be how they want them to be, not how the children would like to be. You know, they don't accept the children for who they are and what they are, and allow them the freedom to be themselves while loving them just as they are. The other thing my mother one time said to me out of the blue, because I was really a very nice little child. I mean, in those days, teenagers were perfectly nice. I don't know what's happened to teenagers. She said to me one day, quite out of the blue, she said, "I just want you to know that there is nothing you could ever do which would cause me not to love you." Yeah, that's it. It's like, you know, holding you gently and loving you no matter what. So that's love. And attachment is a grasping in the mind, you know, and fear of losing and a wish to hold tight to something. That causes suffering. That causes suffering. But the Buddha himself said, when discussing loving kindness, that just as a mother loves her child, her only child, and that one would regard as a perfect example of attachment. You know, I mean, a mother with her only child would do any, but the idea is not the attachment side, but the fact that she loves the child more than her own self. And that if the child was sick, she would gladly take on that sickness if the child could be healthy. So that's what he meant by that kind of love, that completely selfless love, which would rejoice in the well-being of another, even if it caused problems for oneself. So love is like the sun. It shines on everything. It shouldn't be discriminating. I mean, of course, you love those who are close to you more. You're closer to the sun. But nonetheless, it should illuminate everything with this beautiful, unconditional love, using the feeling that we feel for those who are close to us as an example to then extend it further and further and further. As the Buddha said, you start first, of course, with yourself. It's very interesting in the West that so many people find the most difficult part is to be friendly to themselves, to forgive themselves, to make friends with themselves, and to genuinely encourage and feel at home with themselves. We have to be friends. Metta or Maitri is the word for friendship, actually. And so it's this friendliness, you know, of a good friend who you can always rely on, who is kind to us and we supports us in all our problems. That feeling we need for ourselves, then to those we love, to those we feel indifferent towards, and then towards those we have problems with, and finally to all the world, not just humans, all living beings. So that unconditional love is not grasping. And it doesn't cause pain. The more we are attached, the reason why the Buddha said attachment was not good is because the more we grasp, the more painful it is when we lose. You know, if somebody leaves us or dies or whatever, if we're grasping, clinging, then the pain is all the worse. And it doesn't help them, doesn't help us. Whereas if we're holding them lovingly, but without grasping, clinging, then, you know, we can accept their departure and recognize that this is in the nature of things. I mean, it's yeah, I mean, in some sutras, it says the cause of our dukkha is clinging. We cling to our identity, we cling to things, we cling to people. And when we lose them, then we suffer. I mean, even possessions, we could live in a palace, but if we're not clinging, then if we lose the palace, if it all goes up in flames, it doesn't matter. Or we could only have just a little something, but if we cling to it, then our loss will cause us great pain. So it's not the outer object or the person, it's our inner attitude. Clinging is tainted. It's not pure. And of course, it's many problems everywhere. We are so attached. But on the other hand, a lot of the talk about non-attachment was intended for monks and nuns. And in the Fourfold Sangha, the main thrust towards non-attachment was for those who have left the home life for the homeless life, that's the monks or nuns. It was less emphasized amongst the lay side of the Sangha. But still, there's also, I read somewhere recently, somebody come up, I think, was saying there's a difference between non-attachment, non-attachment and detachment. Detachment sounds very cold. Mm-hmm. Non-attachment just means that we're not clinging. And so to work on loving someone genuinely and wholeheartedly without grasping, that's the thing. Don't forget the love. Love is very important. I mean, in Buddhism, love is very, very important. It's not that we're all cold. I mean, you meet any of the great beings like His Holiness again. I mean, yes, on one level, he is very non-attached, but he's total love.
Yes, Jetsunma, I think you can read my notes. In what you just said, one of the big epidemics of our time seems to be that low self-esteem, which is quite surprising to many other cultures, especially to the Tibetans. We all probably heard about the story of His Holiness saying decades ago, low self-esteem, what's that, and figuring out there's not even a word in Tibetan, that describes that phenomenon. And all these high, super, educated people, best in their field, scientists were sitting in front of him, and they're, and he asked, so who has that thing, low self-esteem? And they all were like, okay, let's out ourselves. Of course, reluctantly, especially since they're probably most of them be men, at that time. So what's your observation about that? Why are we so, it's a self-obsessed, I guess, as well.
I think one of the reasons why the Tibetans feel okay about themselves is because they belong to a culture, first of all, where everybody knows who they are. So the ambition and competitiveness is not so great. It was a feudal society, let's admit it. And so therefore, everybody had their place within that society, and you knew who you were. And you didn't have to feel you're endlessly having to strive to be somebody else and do better. I mean, I'm sometimes shocked at people's CVs, how much they're praising themselves, and that that's not really who they are. But that's what they have to promote themselves, the mask they have to wear for society. They can't just be who they are. And along with that, of course, all Tibetans know that inherently we have Buddha nature. So they all know that inherently they're good. They're not sinful. They are not rejected by God or anybody else. And then, of course, in the modern society, even though they have that in their consciousness, there's also the idea in modern psychology that we are all messed up and that, you know, we're all neurotic anyway, and that there's not really much hope. The best you can do is to make your ego function enough for society. But beyond that, what hope is there? Plus, most people don't believe in not only in a past life, but in a future life, that this life is all they've got. And then at the end of that, blank out, that's it. So then what's the point of life? The only point is to strive and strive and strive like a hamster on a wheel until you fall off dead and get a bigger house and a bigger car and more promotion if you can manage it. And inside, it's all empty in the bad sense. It's like a black hole. So you try filling in this hole with more things, more people, more relationships. And at a certain point, there's this little question saying, is this it? Is this it? And so, yeah, I mean, these very eminent people, you know, who have apparently gained great world success, and yet inside they feel like, what was that all about? You know, is this all the meaning there is for life? There's no meaning. And a lack of meaning, of genuine meaning, I think, along with the cultivation of all the kleshas, of all the poisons of the mind, you know, greed is good for you. And all the aggressiveness on the media, even in entertainment, and the enhancement of the ego, which in itself feels hollow. So of course they feel bad. I mean, you know, and they've got nothing to believe in, no real juice in their life. It's very, very bare, very, very dry. And so people inwardly despair, but they mustn't show that. They have to show a confident outer persona, you know, the mask. So yes, people end up with looking at themselves and thinking they're worthless inside because they don't know their true potential. Isn't it sad? This is why it's very good that nowadays they're teaching meditation and mindfulness and so forth in schools, and loving kindness, teaching children how to practice loving kindness and compassion. I think this could, if it's given skillfully, be very, very helpful, especially when you're young. Give them a whole different perspective on what their heart mind is about.
Yeah, what I observe with many age groups is that we seem to have so many choices, and then we always think, oh, we're missing out on something. What would be if I have done this, or if you don't have the choices, if you're not those lucky ones, you know, I mean, we are very, you know, very fortunate, and we take it for granted, you know, the whole thing of taking it for granted. Then you think, oh, if I just had, you know, then of course, you know, then I would be, if I just had that, I would be happy, you know. And so, yeah, in constant search, isn't it?
Oh, it's endless. That's the problem, isn't it? You know, and distraction is endless. There's no focus. And that's very, very tiring also, because as you see, also, especially with young people, but not just, they endlessly have to have stimulation. And that is very wearying for the spirit. They can't just be. And they should take them all out into nature and just leave them there. And they can go off and hug a tree.
Yes.
But no, I'm not completely joking. I mean, I do think that, you know, especially city kids should go out more into nature and just be, not giving them lots of games to play and things, but just letting them wander and sit and just, you know, let go for a change. Not try to be always impressing everybody around you, which must be very tiring. Well, we hope, you know, I mean, a lot of young people are at this point very, concerned with the environment and with, what's going on in the world, and very sensitive to the troubles in the world. And we hope that they will maintain that sensitivity. I mean, my fear is that as they grow older, then they get into relationships, start a family, get a job and a mortgage, and that's the end of their concern for the environment. But maybe I'm being pessimistic, because they're the future. We've not handed on much of a bargain deal, but they are the future, and the planet is theirs. Anyway, never mind. There are going to be 1,000 Buddhas, and we've only had 7 so far.
Jetsunma, do we have a little bit more time? I'm aware that you're, of course, so busy, and we don't want to overstretch you. One more question is okay? Then many of you saw the cave in the snow. So there, Jetsunma talked a lot about, of course, the importance of women, and that there wasn't much importance of women in the cultural context of Tibetan Buddhism, and we could see that in the movie very clearly. And Jetsunma has been such a role model for so many of us, of course, men and women, but especially us women, that we can do it as well, so, coming in this form, of an English woman, and then going up in the cave and all these other things that Jetsunma has been doing. You have been such an inspiration to all of us. So many are now asking, so Cave in the Snow was made, 25 years ago, maybe? Something like that, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So what has happened since then? In your observation, so the role of women, the role of nuns, has anything moved?
Yes. I would say that in many ways, in the last 25 years, the role of nuns in Tibetan Buddhism, at least, has taken a quantum leap. I mean, from being uneducated and on the very, very borders of monastic life, they are now, most nunneries, both in Tibet and in India and Nepal, have study programs. Nuns, as you know, have become Geshe-ma, which is like doctors of divinity, and Kenmos. And in our nunnery, for example, we have about 10 nuns who are committed to long life retreat and are training to become Tokden Ma. That means like yoginis, a very special lineage within our monastic system. And they are very, very committed to their practice, and the yogis themselves teach them. And also our nuns, who are about to become Kenmo, which means like professors. And they are, tomorrow they're doing a Nyungne, which is for a week for this is prostrations and fasting centered on the thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara Chenrezig. And many lay people come, and also monks come, and one yogi comes, and they all practice together. And nowadays, our nuns also do ritual dancing. They're very good at ritual. And in our monastery, I give gratitude to the monks, because who has trained these nuns? It's been the monks. Mm-hmm. And the monks have trained them with great love and great admiration for the qualities of the nuns. They are their best admirers. And so now everything that the monks do, big celebrations, the nuns go along. When the nuns have special celebrations, the monks come along. They're very now brothers and sisters in the Dharma. Mm-hmm. And most of our teachers, the majority of our philosophy teachers of Buddhist philosophy, are the nuns themselves, the graduated nuns. They are teaching now. and also being invited to other places like Ladakh and Kinora and elsewhere to teach. So yes, I mean, not only our nunnery, but all the nunneries around now are flourishing. And the nuns have gained great self-confidence. This is the most important thing. Previously, what do the nuns lack most? Confidence, low self-esteem, right? For being nuns and not monks, praying very hard to come back next lifetime as a male so they can join the monastery. I don't think they do that anymore. In fact, I have met monks who have said they're praying very hard to come back next lifetime as a female because they think the nunneries are so much better run. And they like the feeling in nunneries more than the monasteries. So now the potential for the female is being recognized and appreciated. And yes, I mean, so quickly. Once the idea grew, it's taken form. We are still on the border now with ordination, higher ordination for nuns. That is also about to happen, but whether or not it will be accepted, we don't know. That has always been the big wall. When the idea of education came up, once they got the idea, they thought, yes, what a good idea to educate the nuns. Great. And so the monks stepped forward to train and educate them. No problem. But this problem of higher ordination, bhikshuni ordination, is still, it's a very interesting stone wall. The opposition against something which the Buddha himself inaugurated. In the time of the Buddha, there were many, many nuns. And apparently, even in the 12th century, there are many accounts of nunneries, but never mentioned in the monks' chronicles. So there's always been that interesting, interesting reservation when it comes to monasticism, the higher monasticism in the Tibetan tradition. But it will happen. It will happen. In the meantime, the nuns are ready now. You know, they're highly educated, very confident. They can go forward. Whereas previously they lacked any real learning and they would not have been able to sustain the role of fully ordained nuns. Now they can do it. Nothing to stop them. So yes, it's a good news on that count. The nuns have really come forward and are appreciated not only by the monks, but also by lay people and by everybody. Much respected now in a way that hadn't happened previously. In Tibet also, everywhere. So nuns in Dharamkot, in this big nunnery with thousands and thousands of nuns in eastern Tibet, they have just published 25 volumes of nuns teaching. The female voice in Buddhism.
Wow.
And they themselves are teachers and practitioners and amazing women. So it's not just here, but also in Tibet that women are coming up, Gechak Gompa, with all their big rituals, which they do all the year, and their extreme expertise in yoga, in Tumo and so forth, which they're even teaching to the monks now, because they are supreme in the practice. So yes, this is the time when Tara is manifesting her qualities and really supporting all the nuns. Wonderful. So this is good.
Wonderful.
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. And you're very much part of it, Jetsunma, by,
This is a small part. All the, not just our nunnery, all the nunneries are really blossoming now. It's very, it's not that puts the monks down. It's that it brings up this other side, the feminine side, which they really appreciate. I mean, I don't know other monasteries, but our monastery of Kampagai and Tashijong, the monks love the nuns. They really appreciate them. I mean, love in the real sense, and admire them, and really they're like brothers and sisters. So it's a very beautiful thing now happening for the monks as well as for the nuns. Everybody gains.
Wonderful, wonderful, Jetsunma. Because in the Dharma centers, now also speaking for the Westerners, you know, there are, of course, we all know that at least, we always keep statistics also for Tushita, and this is all nationalities, you know, like 100 nationalities, not all, of course, you know, that the majority are women. So then, of course, it's so important that we have also female teachers, because otherwise we go like, sure, it's all great, but you know, it's yeah, so it's so inspiring, of course, to see also that the nuns, you know, from the shy and, you know, little always in the back, really have the self-confidence. Yes, I think that is, yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah. Great progress.
I think so too. I mean, when, for example, you're talking about the nuns being in the back, when the monks come here for any big occasion, they sit at the back and the nuns are sitting in front and leading all of the rituals, and the monks have to follow them.
Oh, really?
And the monks are really happy about it. You know, they accept that. That's fine. They all sit in the back. So it's good for everybody. You know, it's good for the monks, it's good for the nuns, it's good for lay people, it's good for the Dharma. I mean, it's a win-win situation. It's not that one goes up, the other goes down, but both together go up. And by the way, His Holiness the Dalai Lama actually said to me many years ago that he said, sometimes I think that the future of the Dharma is in the hands of the women.
His Holiness?
Because yeah, His Holiness said to me, because you can see, indeed, you know, the majority of the audience are going to be female. And now gradually more and more authors and teachers and so forth are women. Why not? You know, I mean, nobody's taking anything from anybody. The Dharma isn't a cake that you have to divide up. I mean, it's there for everybody. And nowadays, as women become educated, then also they begin, you know, also many Dharma teachers, and also, for example, Pandita Sayadaw Pandita, who is a very eminent Burmese meditation teacher, very stern looking. He said to me, and I hadn't brought this question up at all, he just said that his best teachers were the women, and that because women, one thing, because when you told them what to do, they just did it, whereas the monks always queried his teachings compared with others that they had received. But also, he said women can jump and fly in space. He said they're at home like, you know, Kandro, you know, traveling in space. He said women are naturally at home in the intuitive, whereas most men like to take it step at a time. They can't just jump. And so he said, therefore, his best meditators were the women. Women felt a natural kinship with meditation. So, I mean, and other lamas have said the same thing, that women are much more at home within the intuitive often. And therefore, you know, if they learn how to meditate, they really take off. So, you know, there are actually many advantages to a female birth, including our natural affinity with the heart. You know, I mean, we don't have to learn how to be loving and compassionate, because nature intends us to be loving and nurturing, you know, in order to be mothers. And so we feel at home within our emotions. We can talk about our emotions, right? And our feelings and so forth. Whereas many men, not only are they naturally less inclined to be in tune with their intuitive side, but also they're trained not to be emotional. You know, boys don't cry. boys don't feel this, boys don't feel that, you know, so they've grown up within this cage. And it's very hard for them. That's why they have to learn how to come back into their, you know, emotional center. Whereas women already know, they're already there. So we have lots of advantages, and, you know, we should be proud of having a female birth. It's a step up.
Thank you, Jetsunma. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's wonderful. I could listen, of course, all of us here could listen to you, of course, all, all day, all night without tiring, but so next time we will talk, hopefully next time will be very, very soon. We will talk about your new book, but I can mention it already, The Heroic Heart. Sounds wonderful, but Jetsunma has talked about it already, the warrior in us. So it's a beautiful title. And since this is a question and answer, I wanted to finish the session maybe with, you know, a remark from one of the people who wrote a question. And he is saying, "Dear Jetsunma, you are a true inspiration in how someone can fully dedicate their lives in the Dharma and be a shining symbol of how the Dharma can truly transform the mind. When you teach, one can feel the inner transformation you have gone through. Your words are not just repeating what one has learned, but comes clearly from experience. So inspiring. That is why I request you to please have a long, long life and continue to teach the Dharma."
Not too long, thank you very much.
So Jetsunma, this is from one of the students. Now you know what follows, so you're running away. Please, a very, very short one. Sashi perki jokchi metok tram re rap lingzi ni de gyampa di sange zingdu mikte o wa yi droko namdak zing la shupa shok. May my Venerable Lama's life be firm, with her wide divine actions spread in the 10 directions. May the torch of the teaching of the Losang always remain, dispelling the darkness of all beings in the 3 realms. Idam Guratna Mandala Kamnyayataya. Thank you so much, Jetsunma. We hope to have you very soon with us in person. So at Tushita, we are planning, we're going a little bit more online. We are still a little bit timid in April, but in April we also start already drop-in meditations and short courses where people can come from outside. And then in May, we're gonna reopen fully for residential courses. So we are trying to be brave, and we hope that all works out for the best and that everybody will stay healthy and happy, and that we can go back to whatever is normal, but to also, yes, having people around in a very blessed place and taking a little bit time out of their normal routines, and yeah, what can really touch them. Of course, online has had so much benefit. We can reach so many more people, we notice. It has been, you know, also a learning curve, but to see that anybody could take advantage who has internet, of course, provided, but there is a special quality to having people at Tushita, we think. So we will return to that as soon as possible. So we hope to have you very, very soon at Tushita. Thank you so much, Jetsunma.
Thank you, Kumpenla, Tuche, and thank you for your beautiful interview. The way you spoke was also very, very beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jetsunma. You're always so kind.
No, it's the truth. Take care, my love.
Thank you so much, Jetsunma, and thank you so much for the interpreters, Venerable Sayana, Venerable Paloma, Alexandra. So kind of you to join all these events. And thank you so much, Pamela, our tireless director running the session. Thank you, Felipe, for organizing all of this. And thank you to all of you, you know, our dear audience. It has been a pleasure having you here. Please have a good evening if you're in India, good morning in the Americas, in Australia, you're ready to go to bed. Have a good day. And we see you hopefully tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a very special guest. Tibetan Lama one cannot see too often online. So it's Yangten Rinpoche, and he's one of the young Lamas, and he has a very clear and inspiring way to speak. And he will be translated by Geshe Khalsang Wamo, the first female Geshe. She graduated in 2011, I believe. Yeah, she's a German nun, and she was the first Geshe and is still the only Western Geshe, female Geshe up to now. So there will be, Yangten Rinpoche will teach, she will translate, and then Geshe Khalsang Wangmo will teach herself on Sunday. So please join again. And tomorrow morning, we're also going to finish the Golden Light Sutra, tomorrow at noontime Indian time. So we hope to see you all back and have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Venerable Siyana. Thank you, Venerable Paloma. Thank you, Alexandra. Felipe, Pamela, bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.